it's 10 o'clock. Sheila Mosquera Bruno, the board chair, and I'm going to call the meeting to order. It's 10 a.m. And Shelley, could you do a roll call so we know the attendees?
I can. Gary Abraham.
Here.
Wendy Clark. Wendy Clark. Eddie DeWinger.
Here.
And Foley.
Here.
Tim Hodges.
Here.
Catherine McKinnon.
Here.
Sheila Mosquera Bruno.
Here.
George Perez.
Here.
Franklin Perry.
Present.
Eric Sanders.
Here.
Eric Schmidt. Gwendolyn Bain. Carla Wild.
Here. Shelley, are you still there?
I'm still here. Looks like we're missing Wendy. Kylie.
This is Kylie. I'm here. You can call me.
And somebody else just joined. Who's that? Who's just joining?
Jared.
Hi, this is Jared.
Gwendolyn.
This is Jared. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Should we go to public comment?
Yes.
If you'd like to provide a comment, you'll be prompted to press 10 on your phone.
This conference is now in question and answer mode. To alert the speaker that you have a question, press 1, then 0. Each question will be asked in the order it was received.
If there's someone here from the public that would like to provide a comment, please press 10, and your request will be placed in a queue and unmuted in the order your request was received. In order to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to speak, comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Before providing any comments, please state your name and your company affiliation. Press 10 now. Public comment period is ended, and I'll turn it back over to Commissioner.
Thank you, Shelley. Our first item on the agenda is a report from our CEO, Nandini. We cannot hear you. I think you're on mute.
Good morning, Commissioner Mosquera Bruno and members of the board. June has been a busy month. I honestly am not sure what month we are in anymore because months are just blending into each other. But just to give a quick update, the strategic planning is in full swing. As you're aware, we had 3 meetings in June. At the end of the 3rd session, we were able to come to an agreement on some higher sort of big picture goals and some strategies with each of those goals. And the next step was for us to come back to you with a plan for how we're going to create specific action steps and metrics related to those goals and strategies. And so that is in our court right now, and we plan to come back to you in the next few days and provide that update. We will be seeking your participation in that effort, and so please stay tuned. In terms of other updates, we are continuing to find ways to provide relief or assistance during COVID. weekly we've been meeting with the governor's ESF 14 task force, and all of those efforts have resulted in a resolution that is before you today, which is a partnership with the Department of Housing to provide rental and mortgage relief to households that are impacted by COVID. I'm not going to go into great detail. Hazim and Michael Santoro of DOH are here today, and we'll be speaking a lot about what we had in mind and getting your approval to move forward. The QAP is currently out for public comment. The public comment period ends July 6th. The hearing was held on June 17th. A number of CHFA staff, including myself, were in attendance. About 22 individuals provided public comment. The overwhelming number of commenters expressed some concern about sustainable design measures. So as a result of public input last winter, CHFA incorporated a greater range of sustainability design measures that could receive points under the QAP. And so while that effort was lauded and appreciated by the community at large, their concerns remain around how we have incentivized, in other words, awarded points relative to each of those options, with the concern being around passive house specifically, that it's not being sufficiently incentivized because of the greater effort and cost involved in going through that particular design process. We will continue to monitor the comments we're receiving. We're going to be posting all the public comments on our website. It's a best practice, and we intend to come back to July 4th with a draft for you to approve. Stay tuned for that. Finally, I would like to say that the Commissioner and I at Nasuda were present at the grand opening of Armstrong Court in Greenwich. It's a part of the state-sponsored housing portfolio. It's a multi-phase redevelopment in a town that has around 5% only affordable housing. So it's an important redevelopment for this town, as well as being that it has not been rehabbed since 1951. Phase 1 consists of 18 new construction townhouses. Phase 2 is before you today for 4% tax-exempt bonds. And Phase 3 received a 9% award this past spring. Along with DOH and CHFA representatives, the Housing Authority of the Town of Greenwich, town officials, as well as state representatives and senators were in attendance at the grand opening. That's my update for today. If there are any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them.
Any question for Nancy?
I have a question at the end, probably. It's not really a question, but excuse me, a comment. In your written report, you're wishing Mary Bryant a wonderful retirement, and I wonder if is she on the call today, or is she not?
That's a really good point, Ann. She's not on the call today.
Okay.
Yes, but go ahead. We want to make
okay. So I'll just say for the record that I actually worked with Mary when she was at the Office of Policy and Management many years ago before coming over here, and I've been delighted to work again with her over the past 9 years on the board, and she is just the best public servant. She's responsive and helpful and knowledgeable and kind, and we'll miss her. So I'll just say that for the record.
Can we make some sort of resolution or something? Because I was going to say something too. I mean, she was the most welcoming person to me when I first came into the agency on the board, and she's just, kind, efficient, committed, all those things that you said, Anne.
And always cheerful.
Sure. I'm happy to consider putting something together. I don't have anything prepared for today's meeting, but certainly we can get something for the next meeting that can be presented to her. And her last day is June 30th, and I fully concur with everything Anne and Carla said. She was incredibly helpful to me, and it's just a wonderfully warm and, she's an institution at CHFA, so we're all going to really, really miss her. But we wish her a long and happy retirement. I'm happy to put something together for next meeting.
Thank you. That would be great. Thank you. Yes. I agreed. She has been always very welcoming to everybody. Any other questions for our CEO? I'm going to have to count 1, 2, and 3, and then move on. This new way of doing business is very interesting. So at the last board meeting, there were several questions about ethics. So we have new board members too. So we invited the Office of State Ethics, so that they're going to give us a presentation, and people can ask questions if they still open questions that we haven't been able to answer. So with that, Nancy, are you on? Nancy? Kelly, is Nancy on?
She was on earlier, but I think she left the meeting. Maybe we can come back.
Oh, she doesn't have audio.
She doesn't have audio. All right, let me see if I can email her. Do you want to move on and come back to that?
Sure. The next item on the agenda is the adoption of the CHFA bylaws. There were a couple of comments from the previous board meeting. And Terry, did you want to take that one on?
Do you want me to give a little presentation? Nancy was going to speak about some of the open items, Commissioner.
Yes. So do you want to go over the bylaws and just answer the questions that they have before and just present the resolution?
Yes, absolutely. Good morning, Commissioner Bruna and board members. For the record, my name is Terry Calderon. We did have several open issues from the last board meeting on the bylaws. The first is Article 10, dealing with the amendments to bylaws, and we did add some language to that board members will get 30 days written notice of any proposed changes. The other questions that came up had to do with conflicts of interest in Article 8. I know Nancy is going to speak to this issue, but I could give you a preview of what she's going to say. There were questions in terms of what is the best practice if board members have conflicts.
We missed you. Could you repeat that again?
Sure. With respect to Article 8, conflicts of interest, Nancy Nicolescu from the Office of State Ethics is going to address the two questions that had come up about this. The first being, is it a best practice to leave the room if you have a conflict? And although it's not required, it is a best practice. It is what the Citizens Ethics Advisory Board does. I did speak with Nancy and the General Counsel at Ethics, Brian O'Dowd, who reiterated that it is the best practice to leave the room in the event of a conflict. And Brian did share some informal ethics opinions on that issue. One came from Innovation. I'm happy to share those with the board. And again, Nancy's going to speak more to that issue in her presentation. Thank you, Shelley, for putting that up. The other issue that board members had was whether they could participate in a discussion on a matter if they had a conflict. And again, Nancy and Brian O'Dowd, and they made it clear that the answer to that is no, you're not supposed to be participating in discussions if you have a conflict of interest on that issue. And again, Brian shared some advisory opinions. One is with the CCEDA, which is the predecessor to CERTA. In that opinion, it said that the best way to avoid conflicts is by recusing yourself from official actions, which include voting and discussions. And, you know, we've highlighted that language. Again, thank you, Shelley, for putting that up. So those were the main issues. Again, I don't want to steal Nancy's thunder. She does have this in her presentation, and she will speak to these issues. But I don't know if there were any other questions on this or if there's a consensus amongst the board members as to the language. Commissioner.
Thank you, Terry. Any questions or comments?
This is Ann Foley. I would just say that last month or earlier this month, I don't remember which, I'm also on the board of CHFA, which is the Connecticut Health and Educational Facilities Authority, and we also voted on our conflict of interest policy, and it is substantially similar to this, so it is very consistent.
Thank you, Ann. Any other questions?
Dana, this is George. I want to make sure we're clear on what the conflict we're talking about, which is a personal financial gain conflict, right?
Terry?
Yes, but there's also, Commissioner, language in the CHFA enabling legislation 8-244B. Shelley, if you could put that up, that would be great. Which basically says that it's not a conflict trustee, director, partner, or officer of corporation to serve as a CHFA board member as long as the board member abstains from deliberation, action, or vote on matters relevant to that entity. So there's that statute, and then there's also the Code of Ethics, which Nancy Nicolescu is going to speak on. So,
thank you, Terry.
Okay, the reason why I want to be real clear, because as commissioner, you know, there may be something that comes on the front of the Commission of Banking. There may be something that comes in front of the board that has to deal with an entity I regulate. Now, I don't own stocks because I'm not allowed to, but I don't like owning stocks. I don't work there. I don't have anybody in my immediate family working there. But because of my role, you know, I may be taking an action that either indirectly benefits that entity because I'm going, then we do business with them, or indirectly impacts them if I vote not to do business with them.
But Commissioner, not an officer or director of those entities, and
correct.
That's all within the statute. And again, a much personal gain from that.
That's what I meant about personal financial gain. There won't be any.
Correct. And that's
well, I'll be clear in the record. So some things, some days I have an issue because because of my role, I get accused by other people who I regulate and enforce against that. I favor one industry over another sometimes, you know.
Yes, I understand.
Hey, Shayla, it's Tim Hodges. Can I just George, to that point, though, I want to be clear because I did have a long conversation with Terry about this. You should be clear, though, that if, in fact, you're on a not-for-profit board, if you were a director on that board, that you would be prohibited from voting. So I just just to be clear on that, in terms of regulating, that's one thing, but I think you're on a number of nonprofit boards as well, as am I, and we would be prohibited from voting on those matters.
Okay, I understand that, but I actually have a legal opinion from that report saying that's not the case, because I'm actually the governor's representative in Labor Works, and I have an opinion from an attorney from the ethics board saying that not only can I vote on it, but even if the funding was coming from my agency, I could vote on it, because I'm not receiving any direct or indirect benefit. Meaning, the agency is not providing me with any service to me or anybody in my immediate family. But that's contrary to what I receive in writing. When the governor appointed me to the board of the way it works to be the representative of the state, and not only am I a member, but I'm the president of the board.
But Terry, maybe you can speak to this, but as Terry pointed out, though, there are two separate issues. One is the ethics piece, but then there's also something that governs CHFA specifically, and that's the issue. I think that where I actually understood what Terry was saying, because if you were just to read our bylaws, we would be fine, but the enabling statute essentially prohibits CHFA board members from voting on issues that they are for organizations that they're involved with.
Okay, so it's not an ethics rule, it's a rule that we self-impose on ourselves, or that the legislator did when they enabled the legislation.
I think that's correct. Is that correct, Terry?
Yes, Ted, you said it well. Thank you for summarizing. Our statute is a little broader than the Code of Ethics, which is in a different section of the Connecticut General Statutes, but there's also an old advisory opinion on this as well that, again, Brian O'Dowd shared with us, and it has to do with the Connecticut Product Development Corporation, which at the time, back in 1989, had a statute very similar to ours. And basically, if you're a director or an officer of an entity that comes before the board you're not supposed to be voting on or discussing anything in connection with that. So yes, Tim, thank you. You summarized it well.
Thank you, Terry. Any other comments before we take a vote? Shelley, could you do a roll call, please? Actually, can I have a motion to approve the bylaws?
This is Sarah. So moved.
Have a second.
This is Ann. I'll second it.
Thank you. And Shelley, now could you do the roll call, please?
Gary Abraham?
Aye.
Andy Clark?
Aye.
Heidi DeWingert?
Aye.
Ann Foley?
Aye.
Kelly Goslin?
Aye.
Tim Hodges?
Aye.
Matthew McKinnon?
Aye.
Ella Mascara-Bruno?
Yes.
George Perez?
Yes.
Franklin Perry?
Aye.
Sarah Sanders?
Aye.
Sarah Schmidt?
Aye.
Gwendolyn Payne?
Aye.
Carla Weil?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Thank you. Motion carried. I do have to congratulate all the board members. This is the first bylaw that the authority has. So thank you and congratulations. Moving on, is Nancy? Nancy, she's ready?
Shelley, did you get a hold of her?
I've been chatting with her, and for some reason, she can't.
She cannot talk.
Nancy, can you email me, please?
Okay, well, Nancy
Going, I guess.
is working on her technology is great, but when it doesn't work, it's not great. So while she works on that, we have a couple of items that we need to take action. The first one is a resolution to authorize the preparation of the 2020 Series J bond issue. Ed is going to present the resolution. Is Ed present?
Yes. Good morning. It's Ed Wiskowski. You have in your package the standard single-family resolution to authorize the issuance of bonds to continue funding single-family home ownership. While this would be the third issuance for the year 2020, it will be the second permanent issue for single-family. The previous bond issue, the 2020 Series B bond issue, was a $75 million taxable temporary bond issue. This resolution is for the issuance of up to $100 million of bonds. It will be combined with the remaining 2020 Series B authorization. The actual amount of bonds to be issued for lendable proceeds is expected to be around $110 million. There's also expected to be some bonds issued for refunding previously issued bonds. The bond issue is expected to close by the end of August, but will depend upon market conditions. There is expected to be 3 single-family issuances in 2020 and 1 multifamily bond issue. So each of the 4 senior managers is expected to take turns running the books on an authority bond issue in 2020. RBC will be the book-running senior manager for this bond issue. There's about $95 million of single-family reservations in the pipeline. Does anyone have any questions?
Any questions, Fred? Who is that?
Wendy.
Wendy, go ahead.
So the resolution provides that certain firms have been selected. Can we get some education around how that's done?
Every 3 years, the authority goes out with an RFP to select underwriting firms. The last go-around, the board selected 4 senior managers and I believe it's 10 co-managers. When we issue bonds, we rotate the book runner around the 4 seniors. We usually average about 4 to 5 bond issues a year, so each senior gets a turn running the books. So in this case, it'd be RBC's turn, if you will. So it's basically one of the senior managers that the board has already previously authorized.
Thank you.
It says on that point, Jerry Abrahams, what percentage of the firms at the manager level or the co-manager level, not selling group level, are women or minority owned?
I'm trying to remember. I think Steve may be correct. I think there's 2 minority or women-owned co-managers. I'm trying to remember off my head.
Yeah, I think so. We have the list.
I mean, it's Rice. I saw Rice there, but other than Rice, I would maybe
Drexel.
Ramirez.
Yeah.
Ramirez.
So actually, I guess there'd be 3, right? Ramirez, Rice, and I believe Drexel.
Drexel is a veterans.
Veterans, yeah.
Academy as well. Yeah. Laylock is minority owned. Luke is minority owned. Siebert. Stern is woman owned.
Yeah, Siebert is woman owned.
And Stern is woman owned. Yep.
Oh, so it's, okay. So at the senior and co-manager level, it's 15%, 10%.
Ed, my husband?
Yeah. In my head, around that.
Yeah, it'd be 2 out of 14, which would be about 15%. And then we have 1 military veterans one. So that would be 3 out of 15, which would be 20%.
Mandy, maybe this is a broader conversation to be had at a later date, but I would respectfully request a closer analysis of minority and women participation in this process, even for the lead underwriters or arrangers, just within their ranks, how they are using minority folks and what that looks like in terms of economics over the years, even if we pick maybe a 5-year look-back period. But I think it's a conversation that we should have, especially given the current circumstances in our nation.
Thank you. Thank you, Wendy. We'll do that.
Any other question or comment? All right. May I have a motion to approve the resolution?
Chair, I'll move it.
Have a second?
Second, Tim.
Shelley, could you do the roll call? Thank you, Tim and Jerry.
Terry Abraham?
Aye.
Wendy Clark?
Yes.
Heidi DeWinder?
Aye.
Ann Foley?
Aye.
Ellie Goslin? Aye. Tim Hodges?
Aye.
Kathy McKinnon?
Aye.
Dylan Mascaro-Bruno?
Yes.
George Perez?
Yes.
Franklin Perry?
Aye.
Sarah Sanders?
Aye.
Derek Schmidt?
Aye.
Linda Lefane?
Aye.
Carla Weil?
Aye.
Unanimous?
Thank you, Shelley. Motion passes. We're going to have...
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Sure, go ahead, Nancy. It's all yours.
Good morning. I don't know what happened. Not my first go-to meeting, and I just couldn't seem to connect to the audio. My name is Nancy Nicolescu. I'm the Director of Education and Communications for the Office of State Ethics, and I'd like to thank the board for inviting me today. As always, it gives me great pleasure to provide you with this presentation, and no doubt will continue to guide you in your role as distinguished public officials and members of the Connecticut Housing Finance Authority. Congratulations on adopting your bylaw. That was exciting to watch and to be able to listen to. So good for you. I'm going to try to make this very quick so that you can go on and enjoy the day. You know that our agency is what we call a civil enforcement. Next slide. Well, that's my favorite quote in the world, my quote from Potter Stewart that says, ethics is knowing the difference between what you have a right to do and what is right to do. And I believe that as state employees, we get up every day and want to do the best possible job that we can. Next slide. A little bit about us. We were created in '77. We're a civil enforcement agency. We're what they call a watchdog agency. And we have a 9-member board that meets monthly, and that's who oversees the Office of State Ethics. The most important thing you need to know about our agency is that we're not a gotcha agency. We really want to help you get it right, and we do spend a lot of time on education and advice. There's a lot of familiar faces in the room today that have had this presentation before. The rules don't change that much, so hopefully you don't have anything new to learn. But we're not a gotcha agency. We really do want to help you get it right. So next slide. Just think of this as like a good book your favorite book that you haven't read in a long time. And you can't remember the main characters' names, and when you pick it up again, it starts to come back to you, and so it's all your favorite things. That lobbyists, contractors, state officials, and state employees are covered by the code, and that the whole point of the code is not to use your state position for financial gain. And you're covered by the code by statute. The Connecticut Housing Finance Authority defines you as a quasi-public agency.
1-79 defines the employees and the board members, and so for purposes of the code, your quasi-public folks are defined as the employees. Next slide. And you know, ethics are personal. Next slide. You can just kind of run through these. Ethics are personal. They're like fingerprints. Nobody's are the same. You leave them all over everything that you do. They're legal, specific set of rules about the law and your behavior. They're value-oriented, knowing the difference between what you have a right to do and what's right to do. And they're practical. They're what you do when nobody's looking. And there's always somebody looking. You need to know what the limits are and how they apply to you. This is an annual training, and so here we are going over these limits for the board members and kind of checking the box that you received your annual training. Our Code of Ethics does cover gifts and conflicts of interest, revolving door and statements of financial interest, which are due on or before July 1st. So that deadline is coming up. If you haven't filed yet, don't forget to file your SFI. Next slide. Our number one rule is to always get advice. Next slide. And every agency has an ethics liaison. Yours is Teresa Calderon, as you know, who's very much involved with talking with our office, our general counsel, and working with me. And I hope that we were able to provide you with good information and guidance today as you enacted those bylaws. Your agency also has its own ethics policy and then some additional statutory provisions. Teresa is not a mandatory reporter, so she can assist you. She serves as that liaison between our agency and the board members and staff of the agency to answer very important ethics questions. If you don't want to speak to Teresa about something that you want to call and get specific advice, I did hear some very fact-specific items today being discussed. We encourage you to call us to check in, to get your own advice from our legal division. Next slide. As you know, gifts is one of the areas that people like to talk about quite a bit, and as a general rule, we just say don't accept gifts. Next slide. A gift is anything of value directly and personally received unless consideration is given, and there are 19 gift exceptions in the law. I've talked about these before. From restricted donors, the contractors, those that are doing business with your agency or seeking to do business, lobbyists, the token item, you can accept token items. Those are items that are worth less than $10 per item, not more than $50 worth per year. You can accept food and beverage from a restricted donor up to $50 per person per year from each donor. The fruit basket is up there because sometimes agencies will receive these types of gifts. And what our board has said is that if you get something of this nature, it's certainly not a token item. It's also not considered food and beverage, but that you should put it in a common area. Rebates or discounts, state employees can accept rebates or discounts as long as they're available to the entire group, but you cannot accept a rebate or discount from a contractor or a lobbyist because of your position in state government. Next slide. Prohibited gifts. This is really one of my favorite slides. How do you know that you got a prohibited gift? Well, you like it. That's really how you know. It's something that you want to keep. It's not a water bottle. It's not a hat. It's not a mug. And so in those cases, what we say is to refuse, return, or pay for those gifts. If you need assistance figuring out what the fair market value is, if you happen to have utilized the gift and thought about it later, that you weren't supposed to accept it, our attorneys can assist with that. Next slide. Other types of gifts are necessary expenses and gifts to the state. You can actually have a donor, a contractor, a lobbyist, give your agency a gift to the state. And a gift to the state can be anything. It can be a conference. It can be equipment, cash, any of those things. So under those provisions, if it's to facilitate state action or function, an agency can pick it. Necessary expenses is what you can accept if you're attending a conference in your official capacity, and that's travel, lodging, meals, and related conference expenses. You can't accept fees or honoraria. So that's kind of a little bit on the necessary expenses and gifts to the state. Next slide. Conflicts of interest. If a board member has a direct conflict, abstention or recusal is mandatory. Sounds like you've just passed that. And I did hear Teresa talking about our advice that the best practice is when you are abstaining or recusing yourself from a matter, that you leave the room, that you don't partake in the discussion. So that is, next slide. And then we also break down our conflicts of interest between direct conflicts and potential conflicts. A direct conflict is when you, your spouse, or an associated business has a direct monetary gain or loss by reason of your official activity. Potential conflicts are a little bit different to parse out. There's a reasonable expectation standard that falls on potential conflicts. And we always say to you, go back to rule number 1, get advice, make a determination whether your conflict is direct or potential. Get that advice from our office or from Teresa, whether or not you need to abstain or recuse. Can you vote on a matter if you have a potential conflict? That's also another question. If you do vote on a matter where you may have a potential conflict, you may have to submit a written statement. So those are all questions for you to work out during any specific event with Teresa or with our office. Any questions on this before I move along? Next slide. If employees have outside employment, it cannot impair your independence of judgment. And board members, you can never disclose confidential information to your other employer for financial gain. Next slide. Outside business, it's impermissible under the law for supervisors to hire subordinates and for subordinates to hire supervisors. It impairs their independence of judgment. Next slide. And when you leave your position, there are lifetime bans. There are 2 lifetime bans and 2 one-year bans. Next slide. The first lifetime ban is on the disclosure of confidential information, and the second one is concerning side switching. So if you were significantly involved in a contract for the CHFA, you cannot renegotiate that contract once you leave your position. That would be called that you can't tear down privately what you built up publicly. And so that's a side switching provision kind of quick for you. If your one-year bans are on coming before your former agency for 1 year. You can't come before the CHFA for 1 year. And if you were involved in contracts over $50,000, you cannot accept employment with that company for 1 year, and that's if you were significantly involved in a contract over $50,000. Next slide. And in terms of cooling off, what that means is that you cannot appear in person before CHFA. If you leave, you cannot sign documents, identify yourself on the phone or letterhead. You cannot publicize your new position to your former employer or call for specific advice and request information. If you're a member or director of a quasi-public and you were involved in the negotiation of an award or contract, you cannot seek, accept, or hold employment with a party to the contract for 1 year after signing the contract. Now, that is for the board members. They have a 1 year time period, so it's 1 year from signing the contract. For the employees, it's 1 year from the date that they leave service. So that's
Nancy. Can I ask a quick question? I'm sorry. This is Carla. This is germane to me right now. when it says call for specific advice or request information, does that include getting advice on conflict, like a call to Terry? So it would have to be a call to your agency instead.
You can ask Terry to act as a liaison between our agency and our legal division, or you can call our attorneys directly. And they would provide you, you can say, I just want to ask a question, but I don't want you to write it down. They will give you their first thoughts on that, or you want it in writing so that you can hold it up. They'll send it to you in an email or, in a letter. Sometimes matters are very complex, and our attorneys may suggest that you request a formal advisory opinion from our Citizens Ethics Advisory Board. But ultimately the choice is up to you in terms of how you get advice. One of the nice things about our legal division is that if you're seeking advice and you've already bumped into the law in terms of perhaps violating it in some way, the legal division is prohibited by statute from going over to the enforcement division. So they're really there to help you get it right or to fix any mistakes that you've made in terms of any violations of the Code of Ethics.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
No problem. I'm trying to go really I know that so many of you, so many familiar faces, you've heard this before, so I'm trying to kind of run through it. Next slide. And enforcement. So I spend a minute on enforcement. An ethics complaint can ruin your career. I personally have no idea what our enforcement division is investigating. Complaints have a high level of confidentiality here. We don't talk about it at the water cooler. It's an immediate dismissal and a $10,000 penalty. You can file a complaint with our agency and directly with our ethics enforcement officer if you'd like. You can do it anonymously or in writing. But if you file a complaint, you too are held to confidentiality provisions. If there is a complaint against you, it stays confidential throughout the investigation and the evaluation. If the complaint is dismissed, it also remains confidential. The only time that a complaint would become public is if a judge, trial, referee made a probable cause determination, or if you enter into a consent agreement or stipulated order with our agency. At that point, it would become public. If there is a finding of a violation, our board can order you to comply with the code in the future, have you file any required reports or statements, like the SFI statements. It's $10 a day, up to $10,000 for not filing, and our board can compel you to file that disclosure. And if there are any violations, civil order you to pay civil penalties of up to $10,000 per violation. Next slide. So remember, I love this quote, you're remembered for the rules you break, so true. Call us, get advice, seek us out, talk to Terry. Next slide. And I am going to end here unless you have any questions for me about any of the items I presented. I went quite swiftly through those items, but everything is available on our website, our plain language guides, so a lot of resources for you. I'll take questions if you have any.
Nancy, can you share this presentation so that we send it to the board members?
Yes, Shelby has the presentation.
Okay, so we will send the presentation to the board members. Any questions for Nancy? Okay, well, thank you, Nancy, very much. Very helpful. I'm pretty sure that if we have questions, we'll call you.
Thank you.
Moving on with our agenda, we have several action items that we need to go through. The first is the resolution for Armstrong Court Phase 2. Maura is going to present the resolution.
Yes, good morning. You have before you a request for TEV proceeds for first mortgage leasehold financing. The construction portion of this will be up to 4.685 at a rate not to exceed 4.25 for a term of 30 months. The permanent portion is up to $7 million at a rate not to exceed 4% for 40 years plus the construction term. The applicant here is the Housing Authority of the Town of Greenwich, and they will are in the process of forming a limited partnership that will be the recipient of the funds, which is Armstrong Court 2 Limited Partnership. As you heard, Armstrong Court is an existing project of 144 units in Greenwich. It's in need of a substantial rehab. It was constructed in 1951. This redevelopment, it will be a multi-phase substantial gut rehab, plus there was the construction of the 18 townhomes. The 18 townhomes are just about complete and will be occupied soon. This phase is the first phase of the gut rehab. What it's doing is taking the existing 48 units, it's combining 6 one-bedrooms and 6 two-bedrooms to make 3 bedrooms, which is needed. So the end result will be 42 units in this this portion of the community. The new construction of the Phase 1 18 units will serve as replacement units, and overall, at the end, it will be 150 units, which is an addition of 6 units to the housing stock, affordable housing stock. The gut rehab is needed for several reasons. The units are energy inefficient, and there's no handicap access or handicap units, and overall, the roofs, windows, and interior finish are either in tired or poor condition. The scope includes the complete demolition of interior walls, ceilings, floors, kitchens, baths, and all the systems, and everything will be new, systems and finishes. The exterior will be a siding, veneer. They will also have new energy-efficient windows, and the flat roofs will become pitched roofs. They're going to replace with pitch roofs. The Housing Authority of the Town of Greenwich is the sponsor and developer here. They are the largest provider of affordable housing in Greenwich and have experience in state and federal programs, tax credit, finance, construction, and capital improvement. For this transaction, the Housing Authority has assembled a strong team with Viking as the general contractor, Ghsa Architects, and the Housing Authority itself will serve as the property manager. They currently are in compliance with all program requirements. The additional sources of funds include $4.8 million of DOH home funds, $250,000 pre-dev loans. There's going to be $5.9 of LIHTC equity. The seller is providing a loan of $3.3 million, and there's various other sources, including energy rebates, HTC proceeds, and there is a deferred developer fee of approximately $687,000. The HTC funds here being used in the projects were awarded in July of 2015. The HTC guidelines require the funds to be used within 3 years. The owner here has requested extensions and has been granted them. The funds were used for the redevelopment, but they needed the SSHP funds to also make the redevelopment happen. And what happened is they had to apply 4 times for the SSHP funds before they were successful. The applicant continued during this period to supply quarterly reports, and they have an approved extension for the HTC funds through February 1st, 2023. The Housing Authority is going to give 15 project-based vouchers to this development for families making less than 50% AMI. The remaining 27 units will be at 60% AMI or below. However, they are scaling the rent so that they can be affordable to the current tenants and their income level. Armstrong Court is a transit-oriented location with a bus stop at the property, providing continuous daily service to downtown Greenwich, Stamford, and the Greenwich train station, which has daily service to New York City. The Housing Authority has one building completely empty and ready to go for this construction. The tenants. 12 tenants have already been relocated to Housing Authority properties. 18 tenants will be relocated permanently into Phase 1, the townhomes which are completed, and then the remaining tenants, this construction is going to be done in phases. So Phase 1 will be completed, the first building will be completed in 9 months, and then that can house the remaining tenants. The assessor here has also agreed to keep the real estate taxes equal to the pilot amount of 10% of the shelter rent. The challenges here are the construction costs here are high, and that's because it's due to the wages are higher in this area than other areas of the state, and the subcontractors' labor costs. Additional pressures on the construction costs were caused by reconfiguring the units, facing the construction, replacing flat roofs with pitch roofs, and environmental remediation. The design approved by the town as part of the zoning approval also included costly elements that the Greenwich Architectural Board required and can't be modified. Mitigating the high construction costs are the sponsor loan, the property reserve, and the LIHTC equity. Due to the COVID-19 health crisis, additional considerations will be required. The contractor has developed safety and sanitary protocols for all construction workers and oversight personnel. Any questions?
Thank you, Maura. Any questions for Maura? May I have a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved. This is Ann.
Have a second?
Second, this is Carla.
Oh, thank you. Shelley, could you do the roll call?
David Abraham?
Aye.
Wendy Clark?
Yes.
Eddie DeWinger?
Aye.
Ken Foley?
Aye.
Ellie Goslin?
Aye.
Tim Rogers?
Aye.
Kathy McKinnon?
Aye.
Ella Mascara-Bruno?
Yes.
George Perez?
Yes.
Franklin Perry?
Aye.
Sarah Sanders?
Aye.
Jared Schmidt?
Aye.
Gwendolyn Payne?
Aye.
Ella Weil?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Thank you, Shelley. Motion passes. Masood, you're going to present the resolution, the MOA with for the state sponsor portfolio and DOH?
Yes, I will. Good morning, Commissioner and members of the board. Staff is seeking your approval to authorize the executive director to enter into a 2-year extension of the MOA with the Department of Housing that will take effect on July 1st, and it will run through June 30th, 2020 for the ongoing administration of the state-sponsored housing portfolio, also known as CHFA. I'm going to be very brief this morning, but just by way of summary, this portfolio was purchased by CHFA through special legislation back in 2003. These properties were originally developed with state statutory funding between 1948 and 1985. In 2013, Governor Malloy at that time announced a $300 million commitment over a 10-year period to revitalize the portfolio. Around that time, CHFA also commissioned a capital plan, and that capital plan has been serving as a roadmap for us in addressing physical and funding needs of this portfolio. I am happy to say that since 2014, over $100 million has been invested in this portfolio. While the capital improvement needs far exceed the level of funding available, this partnership with DOH and CHFA continues to provide critical support in repositioning these properties for long-term success. And so with this extension of the MOA, again, CHFA is just going to continue our partnership, and we're at this time we're asking for a 2-year extension. Funding for this program continues to be done on an annual basis subject to state appropriation. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions you have for us.
Any questions for Masood? May I have a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved. It's Ann Foley.
The second?
Second.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy. Shirley, could you do the roll call, please?
Gary Abraham,
Aye.
Wendy Clark,
Yes.
Peggy DeWinger,
Aye.
Ann Foley,
Aye.
Ellie Goslin,
Aye.
Tim Hodges,
Aye.
Kathy McKinnon,
Aye.
Ella Mascara-Bruno,
Yes.
George Perez,
Yes.
Franklin Perry,
Aye.
Sarah Sanders,
Aye.
Jared Schmidt,
Aye.
Gwendolyn Payne,
Aye.
Ella Weil,
Aye.
unanimous.
Thank you. Motion passes. Masuda, you have the next resolution, which is extension of immediate and temporary financial accommodations for the housing mortgage program.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I would like to take a few minutes to provide a status update on the multifamily forbearance activities for the month of May, and also seek your approval to extend the multifamily COVID forbearance program through the end of the year. Additionally, the board is being asked to supplement the existing process to grant a 90-day blanket relief to certain mortgages whose operations have been affected due to the ongoing impact of the pandemic. So examples of organizations that would benefit from the blanket relief would include community development corporations, nonprofits, housing authorities, or other organizations who have been hit the hardest. Part of the feedback that we've been getting from our customers, particularly from community development corporations, is the need for a blanket relief because of the fact that their revenues are down and their expenses are going up, and having this option available for them would provide great relief. And as you know, there's still a lot of uncertainty about the impact of COVID, and so we feel that by extending this program through the end of the year, it just allows CHFA to have this tool available in our toolbox. As you know, demand has been fairly low compared to what we expected initially. Of the 23 requests that we have received, quite a few of them have withdrew their requests. We have 5 active applications at this point. As a percentage of the multifamily portfolio, this represents just over 1% of the total unpaid principal balance. We also had one mortgager that they were approved under the forbearance program. They declined to accept the agreement, so we're working on exploring other options that will likely be done outside of this program. And then again, just lastly, our asset managers are continuing to review requests for suspension of replacement reserves, so we will continue to do that as a way to provide relief. So with that said, I am asking the board to extend the program through the end of the year and also supplement the process to include a 90-day blank relief as warranted. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you, Masuda. Any questions for Masuda?
This is George. I have a question. When you say 90-day blanket relief, is that at the discretion of staff, or if somebody asks for it, it gets automatically 90 days?
It would be at the discretion of the staff, so we would be looking at the need. Like I said, some of the eligible organizations could be community development, corporations, nonprofits. So we would have to see how what their situation is. Under the current COVID program, we start with an initial 30-day, and then we request additional information to grant additional extensions. So this again, it just expands our toolbox and to have this option available.
But you're going to continue to do that, right? So my concern is that we're not giving 90 days forbearance to somebody who doesn't need it. Or they simply ask for it because it's available, that's all.
Thank
Correct.
you.
Yeah,
So was that again? People spoke at the same time.
Go ahead, Masuda.
correct. Yeah, we would look at the situation, and then based on the need, then the executive director would have.
Okay, thank you. What's the question?
Masuda, Jerry Abrahams.
Jerry.
It's Jerry. Just I'm not sure I understand the point. So right now under the current COVID relief program, you grant a 30-day extension, and then it's at staff's discretion you can extend it. And so the distinction here, the additional change being asked for is that your initial forbearance could be a 90-day period as opposed to 30 under the current plan?
Yeah, so
with extensions?
The current plan would stay the same. It would still be a 30-day initial and then followed by an additional 60 days subject to CHFA's review and approval. So this 90-day blanket relief would be a supplemental option that would be available to us. So if there is a mortgager that is being hit the hardest, we would be able to just grant them 90-day upfront, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. And the justification then for that, as you're saying, because what you really theoretically could do under the current, the way the program is currently configured, but I assume, and I don't want to answer the question for you, but I assume you're asking for the 90-day really just to sort of, ease the administrative burden of essentially granting an initial forbearance period and then doing a supplemental forbearance period.
Correct.
Any other questions?
This is Jared. I have a question. So that deadline of December 31st, is that the deadline for the authorization of the forbearance, or is that the deadline for any forbearance to be ended, to expire?
Yeah, so the program, December 31st is when the program would expire. So in this case, the last application that CHFA would need to receive would be by end of November. And
the authorization.
The authorization, yeah. And we will continue to monitor the activity. So if this program is not needed, then obviously the program we can just put it on pause at that time. And certainly, as we've spoken to some of the other HFAs, they've had a similar experience. There hasn't been a lot of demand for the forbearance, but I think part of that is there's just still a lot of funding and relief options available that, again, we may not see that true impact for the months to come. And so we don't want to pause the program. We want to keep it going, just, again, as another tool in our toolbox.
Thank you.
Any other questions? May I have a motion to approve the resolution?
I'll make a motion to approve.
So Jerry made a motion. Who seconded? Can I have a second? Who was that? Okay, thank you. Shirley, could you do the roll call, please?
Jerry Abraham?
Aye.
Debbie Clark?
Aye.
Heidi DeWinger?
Aye.
Ken Foley?
Aye.
Ira Goslin? Aye. Tim Hodges?
Aye.
Kathy McKinnon?
Aye.
Elma Sarah Bruno?
Aye.
George Perez?
Yes.
Harry?
Oh, yes. Aye.
Beth Sanders?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Gwendolyn Thames?
Aye.
Will Wild?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Motion passes. Has you're next with a temporary housing assistance for renters and homeowners.
Commissioner, this is Carla. Our agency may be one of the agencies that will administer the program that Hazim is going to talk about. So given the conversation we had earlier today, I don't know if I need to leave the meeting and then come back later.
And this is Kathy McKinnon. I'm in the same position as Carla. So.
And since I'm a board member, this is Tim. I guess my question is, do I have to leave the room as well? Because I'm on the C4C board.
I'm on behalf of the board members. So let me do this because of the complications of this technology. Can we do this too? I have two more resolutions so that you guys don't have to come back. Because it's just going to make it a little more difficult to go and leave. So that the Capital Management Fund program is, so we'll put on hold Hazim for this. And Terry Nash has a resolution which is actually to apply for a capital magnet fund, and it's a quick resolution, and then we can do the consent agenda. If we can, it's okay with you guys. We'll do the Terry will do the presentation of the capital magnet fund, and we can also include the consent agenda in that roll call, so we don't have to do like 2 roll calls. Unless somebody protests, we're going to go with that plan. So, Terry Nash, could you please give us the go over the resolution for the application for the capital magnet fund?
Sure. Thank you very much. So you have before you a recommendation to approve CHFA's board in the approximate of $4 million. The capital magnet fund may be used for varied affordable housing purposes, including development, rehabilitation, preservation, and purchase of affordable housing, targeted to low, very low, and extremely low-income families. CHFA proposes to submit an application to support the creation of deeply affordable housing units in the low-income housing tax credit program. Developments financed using either 9% or 4% LIHTC will qualify. The proposal includes allocating a matching award of up to $4 million in ITA funding to further enhance the leverage that is critical to the application. With this ITA allocation, LIHTC equity and state gap funding, we anticipate our leverage will be highly competitive. Applications are due July 27th, and awards are typically announced at the end of the year, or potentially the last couple of years they were announced in February the following year. So we may anticipate an award announcement in the spring. There being no risk to submitting an application, we recommend that the board approve the application for the CMF fiscal year 2020 program grant, and if awarded, CHFA would also allocate $4 million of ITA with matching dollars to create an $8 million fund to support the creation and preservation of multifamily housing in the state of Connecticut. Are there any questions?
Just for Terry. Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the resolution for the capital magnet fund and to approve the consent agenda?
So Kathy McKinley.
So Kathy moved. Who seconded?
I'm going to second.
Okay. Charlotte, would you do the roll call, please?
Yes. Jerry Abraham?
Aye.
Wendy Clark?
Yeah.
Aida Wingert?
Aye.
Ken Foley?
Aye.
Heather Goslin? Aye. Tim Hodges?
Aye.
Kathy McKinnon?
Aye.
Sarah Bruno?
Yes.
George Perez?
Yes.
Bill Perry?
Aye.
Sarah Sanders?
Aye.
Schmidt?
Aye.
Ellen Bain?
Aye.
Bella Lyle?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Motion passes. And before the board members are going to excuse themselves, I do want to acknowledge that Carla Weil this is her last board meeting, and I want to thank you very much, Carla, for your participation and for your contribution to the board. Nandini, I don't know if you want to say something to Carla?
Yes, I just want to say thank you, Carla. I haven't known you very long, but it's been a pleasure. We appreciate your service, and we wish you all the best. I'm sure we'll be talking to you in the near future.
Well, I won't talk to you for a year, but then we'll talk.
Okay, got it.
That's fine. But, this has been a wonderful experience. It's been my honor to participate, and I'm very excited for the direction that CHFA is going with the strategic plan and with a lot of the initiatives that have been talked about. So I will be watching with interest, and thank you all. It's been an honor to serve with all the people on the board.
Thank you, Carla, very much.
I'm crying a little.
Oh. Anybody else wants to say goodbye to Carla?
Bye, Carla.
Bye.
Thank you, Carla.
Bye, Carla.
Market Committee. The team is
Thank you all.
Anyway, thank you very much. We're going to proceed with our last item on the agenda, and thank you, Carla, Kathy, and Tim.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you.
Again?
Thank you.
Ron.
Okay. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. I'll be presenting a resolution for the CHFA to administer the state temporary housing assistance program. The program provides an ability for qualified renters or homeowners who were or are impacted by COVID-19 to receive much-needed rent or mortgage payment assistance for a period of time. By way of background, the federal government enacted the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, or the CARES Act, on March 27 to mitigate the stress and financial hardship caused by COVID-19. These mitigation efforts include, but not limited to, the establishment of the Coronavirus Relief Fund, or the CRF, for states, tribal, and local governments, adjusting federal rental subsidies for tenants, and requiring lenders and services of federally backed programs to provide financial relief to homeowners or projects that are part of such program. Since the CARES Act's financial relief is limited to mortgages, assets, and programs that receive federal assistance, the state decided to roll out the temporary housing assistance program that specifically targets population that were not covered by the CARES Act by using a portion of the CRF and ask the Department of Housing, or DOH, to spearhead the design of the renter portion. While working on the renter portion, DOH reached out to CHFA to see if CHFA could produce a companion program for the homeowner portion due to its expertise in administering the Emergency Mortgage Assistance Program, or EMAP. Additionally, DOH would like to leverage CHFA's existing relationship with counseling agencies, as these agencies would play an important role in guiding and providing the best solution, the best outcome for the impacted tenants and homeowners. Included in your package are the parameters for both renter and homeowner programs. In summary, it identifies the amount available for funding, the applicant eligibility criteria, the amount of assistance available for each applicant, and other related program requirements. Please be aware the parameters are subject to change. However, we do not anticipate any changes will be material. The resolution, upon approval, will allow CHFA to do the following. 1, enter into a memorandum of agreement with DOH to run the program. 2, use resources as defined in the resolution to pay for program expenses. 3, engage third parties such as counseling agencies and call center to help run the program. 4, pursue or apply for grants or other sources to supplement existing resources to pay for the program expenses. And 5, provide assistance to qualified renters and homeowners for a certain amount and for a certain duration. Finally, I want to recognize Michael Santoro, who is in attendance, and we will be happy to answer any questions the board may have about the program.
Thank you, Hazin. Any questions for Hazin or Michael? So I'll do 1. Any question 2, 3? May I have a motion to approve the resolution? Did you guys hear me?
So moved.
This is George. I'll second it.
Okay. Shelley, could you please do a roll call?
Yes. Jerry Abraham?
Aye.
Wendy Clark?
Yes.
Heidi DeWinger?
Aye.
Ann Foley,
Aye.
Tyler Guslin,
Aye.
Stella Mascara-Bruno,
Aye.
George Perez,
Yes.
Franklin Perry,
Aye.
Sarah Sanders,
Aye.
Jared Schmidt,
Aye.
Gwendolyn Thames,
Aye.
unanimous.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. This is going to be a great assistance to those residents for the temporary relief of rent and to help the homeowners. So I need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Move and second, and can you just all say aye? So come to the
Aye.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.